Hey guys, welcome back to the show. This is of course Full Power Pillock, and today what we're looking at is clocks and clock devices inside Minecraft. Now, why are clocks useful in Minecraft? So the Minecraft clock and the light sensors have kind of been the butt of many jokes over the years. Sure, you can just look at the sky to see what time of day it is, and the solar light sensors don't actually work underground. But when you think about it, they actually provide a very important function, and that function is to bring builds alive. So what do I mean by bringing builds alive, you may ask? Well, you see, if you think about most Minecraft worlds, there's not too much that actually occurs inside them. I mean, sure, you have like quite interesting looking things, and you get more and more interesting castles and houses and mega bases and things like that, but when everything's stagnant, and nothing moves, it can get a little bit boring. And that's where clocks can actually be useful. So the first one that we're going to look at today is a rustic clock design. Now this is kind of meant to be a bit sort of like a cuckoo clock or something along those lines. It's meant to give you a bit of an idea as to how you could possibly use something like this. And it's kind of interesting, to be honest, because when you look at it, the redstone behind it is actually quite simple. I'll switch RTX off for a moment so you can sort of see the glass blocks and how everything's sort of structured. Sure, it's using quite a bit because I am trying to power a giant wall, but at the same point, it's actually not that complicated of a build. It's relatively quite simple compared to a lot of other builds that I've actually made. But the biggest function of these clocks is that it actually brings life to your world. There's not just a stagnant world that's actually doing nothing. So for instance, if I was to set the time to sunset, then as you will see, slowly it changes over time. And you get that sort of change and fluctuation as the day and night sort of rises and sets and things like that. Setters isn't a word, of course, but as you can see, it brings something else to your world. It makes it feel like it's actually alive, it's actually active, and to be honest, it's not really that much load to put on a computer, so generally you could fit something like this in quite easily without too much of a struggle, and it does make it look rather interesting when you really look at it. So you do get something kind of unique. Now, what if you're not building a rustic world? Well, I've done another design which is kind of, I guess, sort of a modern mixed with a classical sort of design. So what we have here is obviously what we would call something like a binary clock. So a binary clock is just basically something where it's a simple device. So this is basically when it's nighttime, it goes down. When it's daytime, it goes up. And it just basically repeats the same thing over and over again. But when you think about it, you could have this as a standalone plinth just in the middle of nowhere, because the redstone behind it is obviously quite small and very compact. You could even fit another one of these on the backside. And not only does it make your Minecraft world look bigger and more interesting, but it also brings that sort of active sort of feeling to it. So if we set the time to sunset, not sunrise, sorry. And as you can see, as the sun rises, it slowly seeps up the top of the plinth, and basically we get some really sort of interesting changes throughout our world. So you could have these structured around your base and things like that, and they're not complicated, they're not too expensive. I mean, the quartz is probably the worst part of this build, to be honest. The redstone's actually quite a simple sort of layout. If I show you behind it without RTX on, all it is basically glass going up and down, and we have two separate light sensors, one for nighttime and one for daytime. And it's just going up there. And as you can see, these aren't actually connected at all. So we've got basically glass and redstone, which is quite simple and cheap. And obviously you'd need to have some glowstone for obviously the lights. But aside from that, it's actually quite simple. But what if you aren't building something like that? What if you're building some sort of Stargate style battleship or something along those lines? Well, I've got something for that as well. You see over here, what we have is it partway through transitioning between day and night. We'll see it change in a second. These don't move very fast, obviously. These are clocks. they move quite slowly. And the last one's about to go any second. Any second now. We'll see it change out, please. Just work. Just work for me. There we go. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, during the daytime, it's quite yellow. It sort of changes the way that things are. So daytime, yeah, I mean, it's kind of okay. I could probably change out the color for something else. I don't think the yellow sort of suits this build too much, but it does sort of represent more the daytime sort of feeling. However, if we switch it out to midnight, then, oh, isn't that wonderful? Have a look at this. So this is much more sort of in keeping with how I could imagine something like a, I don't know, Egyptian sort of starship, or maybe even something like that. I mean, you get these awesome sort of black light effects through RTX and things like that, where it does feel like you're out in the stars. I mean, if I was building this high enough up in the sky or something like that, then you'd actually have like no ground below you or anything like that. I don't even think that you can see the ground very well. No, you can just see your reflections. So it does feel very sort of starship-ish. And not only that, you get some really interesting sort of patterns. I mean, this is just a basic corridor. I mean, it doesn't have to be something super crazy, but it makes it feel more interesting, more interactive, makes it feel alive. But what if none of those actually suit your needs? Maybe you don't build rustic things, maybe you don't build modern or classical style or Stargate ships. Well, I've got something here for you as well. Let's say, for instance, that you're into sort of medieval sort of stuff. Well, if we jump up here, then what you'll find is a very simple version of a clock, which is basically a yellow block up the top when it's daytime, and when it's nighttime, if we swap it over, then you find that the blue block comes down. Of course, obviously it's nighttime because it's dark and it's quite obvious, but when you look at it, it's something to bring your world alive. It's not meant to be something that is, you know, super useful. Because when you think about it, most of the time, building things like mega bases and even most sort of bases, to be honest, is actually pretty useless. There's not a lot of reason behind it other than wanting to create something that's quite unique and interesting. And why not create something unique and interesting that feels like it's a world that gets lived in and even has pop-up lights that disappear during the daytime? But maybe I haven't hit a core with you yet. Maybe I haven't made something that's really stood out as being quite interesting. So what we have here is something probably, I guess you could call a little bit more gothic. Now, during daytime, it's nothing really to look at. I mean, it's basically just a whole bunch of floating platforms. But if I can not fall off the platform, if we were to switch it out to nighttime, so something like that, what will happen is you'll start to see that we slowly get a little bit of lava occurring. Now, this is kind of like a lava fountain. Sort of acts a bit like a beacon, so you can see where certain things are, or maybe you don't want mob spawning. This would be a very effective way to stop mob spawning. And as you can see, is that very slowly we start to get this nice lava effect sort of seeping down over the entire floating platforms. And then eventually it comes all the way down to the bottom. So once it actually gets there, we'll actually see something quite nice. And it kind of works in quite well. I really do like this sort of as a build because it does have a lot of active sort of parts to this where it's pretty resourceful, it's pretty useful as far as, you know, lighting things up and killing mobs, but overall it's just interesting and fun to watch. And it's a little bit dangerous. It is very dangerous. So you realistically wouldn't want to have this too close to anything too flammable. And of course, the phantoms come out right when we're lighting the giant lava fire. I've tested this a few times, and some of the phantoms accidentally sometimes run into this as well. So it does kill phantoms, which is quite useful. And then as we can see it during the daytime, it basically all goes away. So slowly we'll start to see it all close up the top, which is basically just 4 pistons with a bit of lava in the middle. Nothing too sort of crazy and exciting as far as the redstone goes. But then we get this awesome sort of seeping down effect, which is kind of cool. So if we have a look at it, you can see that the lava is starting to come back down now. And it's interesting. I do like this one. I think this could be quite useful for having something like a center room feature even. In something like a giant castle evil base or something like that. That would be quite awesome to have. But let's move on to the very last one, because this one is a little bit more redstone, sure, but it does something definitely a bit different. So what's happened here? I must have set this the wrong way. Okay, let's set this. No? Yes, that should be the correct way. So what we should be able to do now is, as you can see, nothing's lit up. Now we can go time, set, day, and it moves it forward. So what this does is slowly over time, you'll actually notice that this lights up. So if we were to do another full day's cycle, then we would have time, set, sunset. Then we can go time set midnight, and then finally time set day, and it moves it another one forward. So what this actually is kind of like a calendar, or I guess a day counter. So you could actually track the amount of days that you've survived in like a hardcore world or something like that, and you get notifications of it as you get to different points. And then at the end you could set it up to some sort of doomsday clock or something like that. But whatever you want, it's completely up to you about how you sort of do things. But I hope that you guys found this quite interesting and quite fun, because now there's a bit of a shadow effect happening behind me. That's a bit sort of strange. I wonder if that shows up on recordings. It sort of does. Weird. But I hope you guys had a bit of fun with the things today, and hopefully got some inspiration for some strange parts of Minecraft Redstone worlds. It is a bit sort of odd and a bit sort of weird, but yeah, I think that this could be a really good way to bring some interactivity into your Minecraft world. So thank you for joining me, and I'll catch you later. And I'm not going to say the whole subscribe thing, because you know what to do. There's a button down below or something like that, or ring the bell and knock the gong, and I'm talking absolute bollocks now. I'll catch you guys later. See ya.